Hey, good morning. Cold morning out there. This is Ben with Studio on the Lake. I'm back down in Iowa for another week, so I can't answer Jordy and just Carve Rob's spirit birds that they're doing. But there's some of the rest of you guys out there. I won't name you by name, but go down there. Jordy and Rob did that for you guys. Hey, look, Valentine's Day this is Friday. It's Sunday. So here, grab a piece of basswood and get yourself a pattern off the internet and carve a love spoon. There's two of them. I'm going to do one purely with a knife. That'll be this first one. And then the second one, which you won't get for another week or two, is the one on the right there. And that's going to be done with power carving. So you see the difference between power carving a spoon and just good old-fashioned knife work. And I got to admit, there's a drill in the middle that you didn't get to see where I drilled out one part of it, and there is a gouge that's there. So grab a piece of basswood, build a pattern. You can see that this one was folded in half, so I basically roughed out a spoon, and then I cleaned up one edge of it, folded it in half, so I got a mirror image on that. And then grab a Sharpie, grab your basswood or whatever you've got. If you do these in more of a hardwood like an oak or a maple or something like that, they'll take a stain real nice. The only difference is you'll be taking a fourth of the cuts. In other words, really small cuts in the hardwood versus you'll see me taking some pretty big slices off of this basswood. Although the basswood does stain up pretty nice if you set it up correctly. Someday I may show you that deal, but you kind of seal it a little bit. But it has a tendency to be a little bit like pine, and you can ruin a carving. So over to the bandsaw. This guy it turned out with a little bit of a back bend in it, and that wasn't the intent of it for sure. The intent was to show you just how easy this is to carve. I think this guy took about 2 hours. Edited. This thing's about 25-30 minutes, and for those of you that stick around, there's a couple bonuses towards the end of it. And like I said, this is Friday when you see this, maybe Saturday morning. You still got time. If I had carved this and brought it into the house, the wife would have looked at it and said, that's nice, that's real nice, and that had been the end of that. So if you're a carver and you're doing a lot of carving and you're carving it for the wife, you better make it really something special. This is a nice spoon, but it's not extra special. So if you're a carver and you're trying to impress your significant other, you got to top what you did before. In this case, I don't have to, because I'm doing this as a complete tutorial, and the majority of it is run at 2 times the speed. I think one point in the middle I zipped it up to 3. But grab yourself a bench carving knife or a carving knife. That's my favorite one. It's a Refinements. It's the ones that I use now. I tend to stick with a knife maker, and there are a lot of really good ones out there. But I tend to stick with one knife maker for several years, 4 or 5 years. And the last 4 or 5 years, it's been Refinements. I think this is about a 3-year-old knife. And I'm getting better and better because I don't break them like I used to. When I first started carving, I would break a lot of knives. So to me, the first thing I want to do is I establish the front of this, and now I'm going to round over the back. The shape that I have in that bowl is completely worthless. It won't pick anything up, won't do what you want it to do. It's a pure decorative. And you just take slow slices, and you can see that I'm turning this around and working in different directions. That has to do with the way the grain is. When you pick up a knife and you start doing this as a beginner, you'll quickly figure out which way the grain is running. If your knife has a tendency to bite into it or look like it's trying to split off a piece, I'll show you a little bit of that when we get towards those, fleur-de-lis or whatever the heck they are up there by my left hand that stick out. So you got a spoon on the bottom, fleur-de-lis, heart, heart, and then a little cable heart on the top. I'm not going to get real fancy with that. But here I am cutting down across the grain. There's a slicing cut. You can see I'm kind of rocking that on my thumb, and I'm just rounding the back over. I suspect there's probably a center line in there somewhere. Yep, there's one on the front, so I don't know why they wouldn't be on the back. So this is the hardest part of a spoon. You can do this with a knife, but the knife doesn't get down in there. You got to do some really interesting cuts. You can do it completely with a knife. But here's the newfangled thing. This is called a spoon gouge, or I guess a spoon knife. It's a hook knife, and you can see that one. That one's about 4 or 5 years old. And I don't particularly care for it. It's better if you were to use this with a vise. You'll notice I'm having a little bit of trouble holding that safely, and you'll notice that I like controlled cuts because I don't like to cut that left hand in there. And this thing is kind of unwieldy. I've got an idea for a spoon gouge, for lack of better reference. I think just a little nub sticking out with a hole drilled in it, kind of a button hook thing. And I tend to build one of those as soon as it gets a little bit warmer and I can get back out to the forge, and I will see that. But this one's a big monster thing. It works out real nice if you can get 2 hands on it. And I don't show you that here, but you can get one hand kind of guiding it like a chisel, but you got to hold this thing in a vise or a clamp on a bench. So here's another way. This is probably my preferred way. Again, this would be better clamped down, and as you know, I'm sitting on my butt in my chair with my pillow, Jordy, and I'm working this through. So here's a little gouge. It's probably number 8. It's an old antique gouge. It's one of 2 or 3 of a set. It actually has the carver's initials on it somewhere. I wish I'd have shown you that. So this came out of somebody's tool chest. I have no idea where I bought it over the years, but I've got 3 or 4 of them from the same guy. He went ahead and put his initials on those, and they're a real quality tool. It's an English tool, if I remember correctly. But they're real nice. They stay real sharp. And I don't usually grind them. You'll see later on here is this. I decide that this is a little dull on the end, and I'm just going to strop that gouge up a little bit. But these are baby steps. You'll notice that's a smaller gouge. The reason I'm working with a smaller gouge instead of a bigger gouge is I can power through it and run that smaller gouge. Whereas if I had a bigger gouge, I would have to get a mallet, and once you do that, 2 hands are occupied and you need to put it on a bench. So I cut a little bit of the bowl out of there to see how it was going to go, and you notice I left a rim around that. And now I'm kind of making sure before I get up there near the edge, I'm going to make sure that I've got the shape of that spoon on the bottom that I like, and I'm just taking nice small slicing cuts and making this real smooth. When you're doing this with the hand tools, which I'm going to do the whole thing, it leaves some really nice faucets on there, or facets, however the heck you say that, and real nice clean cut lines. And you can sand those all off and make them really smooth, but I'm not going to, and I'll show you a little bit later on. It gives it kind of a unique character, and if this were to gently age for 100 years, those gouge marks and those knife cut marks would still be there, and they'd take on a really nice patina. As always, you want to go back often and put your reference center lines in there. So I'm going to leave the line, the center, that center line is going to be left primarily on the back, and then I'm going to round each side over to that center line. And you're starting to see in here, you can probably tell the difference without me yakking at you. This is 2 times the speed. This thing did take about 2 hours. It's enjoyable. It's a lot more enjoyable if you're not trying to keep it in frame. If you're just sitting there watching TV in the background. You saw at the beginning, the studio is bone chilling cold. It's in those teens. I think -20, -24. when I went out on the morning that I carved this, and it took a little while for the stove to get cranked up. I gave it about a half an hour in the house after I'd started a big fire in there, and it was still a little bit chilly on the outside. You can tell when it starts to warm up because I take that flannel shirt and unbutton it. Now, if you're smart and you're doing the first spoon you do, you'd put one heart somewhere in the middle of that up on the top, and as opposed to basically 3 hearts above it, and then you'd spend all your time on this bowl, and then you would take it and carve some initials in there, hopefully yours and hers, and then you would go give it away Sunday, and that might be worth something to somebody if they're not used to you carving. If you have carved a couple thousand pieces or more, it tends not to impress them anymore. They just kind of go, oh, that's nice. On occasion you hit upon something that's pretty unique. So let's talk about Jordy's spirit bird deal. A while ago, you're those of you that follow the channel, Jordy said when I was doing a carousel animal, hey, do a spirit bird. I checked out this morning. Like I said, I'm sitting down here in Iowa in the condo, flying nights this week, and I noticed that Rob had finished his spirit bird, and Jordy had finished his spirit bird. And Jordy didn't like his, but I think it's pretty awesome, actually, and I think Rob's is pretty awesome. The beauty of doing these different these stupid challenges that we do, in addition to poking fun at each and every one of us, and Jordy starts all of these, I mean most of these, I think, I'd have to think back, but most of it started by Jordy saying, why can't you do this or that or the other thing. We are going to probably end up, by the time we're all done with this carving crap, having so many different spirit things. I mean, we got a spirit pig, we started off with a spirit fish, I noticed Jordy did a spirit seahorse. It's just kind of neat, but the beauty of it is to see how different people's minds work. So Calvin, we haven't seen yours yet. You need to get in on this. Mark the Maker, Cleve's Backyard, you guys, you know who you are. You need to get in there and to do this. I'm marking the back of that off. I'm going to take that to the bandsaw and cut that part off. So I'm working on the fleur-de-lis, for lack of better reference, up in the corner. Why did I put that there? I don't know. It's really not very bright, and the reason it's not very bright is because you notice that sticks out, and that grain is running from the top of that spoon all the way down to the tip. Those pieces, those 2 pieces out there on the edge, are going to break off someday. If this thing lasts for 100 years, one of those wings will be broken, and the reason is the grain runs straight up and down through those. So when you're carving this, it's highly likely, if you were to do this exact same pattern, you have a pretty good chance, a 50-50 chance of breaking one of those 2 wings off. That's not necessarily a problem, because what you would do, and this didn't break on me, but I thought it might. If it breaks on you, you just carve the other side down and put some other kind of a shape in there and pretend like it never happened. And if you're filming, you just edit that part out, and it'll work out pretty good. So I've got the rough shape, and you'll notice I haven't finished the bowl, I haven't finished the back. I get it down to the point where I'm liking it and it's working for me. And then I'll come up and start working on another piece. And in that case, this piece, this piece just happens to be the first heart. And I don't think I'm not going to show you the second heart in there, because obviously it's the same. And I'm not going to carve any initials in this. So right now, that kind of in the middle there, and I have to go a little bit deeper because I've got a gouge mark right below that heart. But I put that in there. I can carve pretty aggressively to get this heart to round over. And like I said earlier, these should be relatively, well, should be. They can be whatever you want to be. You're carving it, right? So they should be relatively symmetrical, I think. In this case, you see a couple of them are wonky. They're off to the side. But that's really part of the beauty of the folk art on this. It's not perfect. You wouldn't want it perfect and machine made. Otherwise, it's just another piece. I mean, I don't know that you would go out and buy one of these in plastic or cast in something. It just kind of loses its allure. Those of you that are older like me, if you remember the old days, remember the 60s, early 70s, every house was either green, yellow, or autumn colored. They had the sun clock with the spokes on it, and then over in the corner was a large knife, fork, and spoon, like a 2-foot, 3-foot size knife, fork, and spoon. Remember those? And a lot of you are going to remember those. You can probably still find those at flea markets and that sort of thing, although there's not a lot of flea markets going around nowadays with the COVID. So you round that heart over and continue on up, and you'll notice that this guy's starting to take on a little bit of a bend, and I just ignored it because that's not what the whole purpose of this is to show you how this can be done. And you are running out of time. So I'm coming back now, and like I said, the hardest part of this whole spoon is getting that bowl. And what I'm doing now is I'm cutting down into the bowl, and although I am doing a little bit of shaping, I'm doing this kind of around it because I want to leave these chisel marks in this, and I want to leave them in there in this pattern. I'm going to take a very light, like 20-second pass with a piece of sandpaper when I'm done. I'm not intending to sand any of the tool marks off. I'm just trying to knock off a little bit of the fuzz. So the beauty of this tool, this is a nice size for the way that I like to work. It would probably be a number 8 gouge, and this one's probably, I don't know, 1/2 inch maybe across. You know, I couldn't tell you the sweep on it, but there's a couple different things. If you want to go back and look through my videos, I do talk about the different gouges. So here's some Tripoli on my leather strop that's ancient, and no one makes that anymore, unfortunately. But it has all these nice grooves on it with different sizes, and it works really nice for the chisels. So that was all that took to get this thing just razor sharp again. You can see I'm using it just like a pencil. So I've worked all the way around the bowl, and I'm coming back and just doing nice little finish cuts. And you can see in the video what this is doing. This is really giving it the character. Now, if you go over to Germany, they cheat. You go down to Oberammergau, which has 30 or 40 wood carving shops and different religious characters. But you'll see a guy carving something like this, and there'll be 30 more of them on a shelf for sale because it's a tourist town. But he'll have his tools all laid out on his bench, and he'll have this blank sitting there. And you look at the blank, and you can obviously see that this thing had been done on a duplicator. So they'll take the duplicator and run this piece in the rough, and you can see the different marks from the duplicator. It's kind of rough, and then they'll take their tools and they put this part on it, and poof, it's a finished product. So they do a little bit of cheating. Now, speaking of Oberammergau, if you walk around the town, there are 4 or 5, maybe 10 shops that don't have the stuff, primarily religious figures, that the other shops do. I mean, these guys have been doing this for 100 years, a lot of these shops, in one family, and they're famous for doing particular carvings or similar ones. But those 5 or 10 unique guys obviously were classically trained, and they'll have some pretty cool stuff. They'll have all the standard religious themes and various different stuff in there, but on occasion you get something really wacky. It would be like walking around the quarter and finding Jordy's shop over there and saying, hey, this stuff is awesome. So, yep, that's Jordy Johnson over there at Carving Fusion. We like to pick on each other, but you check Jordy's channel out. Just Carve Rob over there. Those guys are not right. And Calvin, like I said, you need to get busy and start paying attention and get that spirit. What the heck? Which spirit are we doing now? We're doing the spirit bird. That's where you're at. And the rest of you guys down below too, Cleve, Mark the Maker, you other guys, you need to get busy and do your thing too. So you see, I'm just gonna probably 30 seconds, and all I'm doing is taking the fuzz off this because I want to leave the tool mark in there. If you're going to give this to your significant other, it would behoove you to carve her initials on those hearts, or 2 hearts or whatever. Maybe if you got a bunch of little kids, you'd carve you and her, Jenny plus Johnny up at the top, and then you put your kids down below or something. That's just an idea. And now I'm cleaning up the edge of that. That's the last thing that I would do, and you have to be really cautious on this because you got to go with the grain. You notice how I stopped there? That was starting to bite in, and I wasn't getting the nice shear cut around the edge of that spoon that I liked. And this is a purely decorative spoon. It won't work it will work, but if you're out in the woods, you would certainly carve a little bit of a different shape. I may do that one of these days, but I just wanted to put something together that wasn't necessarily a heart for you guys for Valentine's Day. As I was saying earlier, if you haven't checked out any of the people down below, by all means do so. This, if you like what's going on, click the like button. That helps out the channel dynamics. And subscribe, doesn't cost you anything if you think you might want to see some more of this stuff. And after you subscribe, you can completely ignore everything. I was looking at Jordy's stuff this morning that he finished. I was looking at Rob's bird that he finished, spirit bird, and then right next to that was the top 10, somebody, and I didn't really pay much attention, but he said the top 10 wood carvers, and of course Gene Messer made it on there, Doug Linker made it on there, although they don't need any help, but I was noticing that none of the Jordy or the rest of us didn't make it in the top 10, and I can't do a top 10, obviously. You can't put yourself in there. I think our stuff is pretty good in the carving community, and we're trying to show you guys how to do this stuff, primarily, most of us, and we're having fun with it, and that's the main thing is having fun. I know there's a bunch of people that follow us that would never or don't carve and have no intention of carving, and they just follow along on the channels just to see primarily what Jordy's up to and what kind of trouble he's causing the rest of us. So like, comment, and subscribe for sure. You can do this with just a knife. I've told you I don't think a pocket knife is the way to go. You can get in a lot of trouble with a pocket knife because it'll come back on your hand. A lot of people will use Swedish sloyd knives, and I've showed you those, and I should have pulled one out on this one, but they're a little bit bigger. They have a 3 or 4 inch blade. Some of them have 2 inch blades. I kind of like this. It's about a 1.5 inch blade. It's a little bit thinner than a Swedish sloyd knife, although the Swedes have done a lot of carving, to include chip carving over the years, sitting around a fire with a Swedish sloyd knife. But this is what they would call a bench knife, or a bench carving knife. It fits in your hand well, and you can see that I treat it kind of like I treat the power carving as a pencil, and I'm just doing little pencil cuts. And you'll notice that I don't have a carving glove on, and the reason for that is over the years you'll notice I never get my hand in there, and all those cuts are controlled. I keep that hand away. And I've been lucky, knock on wood, not to get a cut for many years. So, driving you crazy, here's the last part up at the top. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do here. But I knew I wanted to have a circle, someplace to hang this up on the wall, because obviously it's such a spectacular piece. After you give it to your significant other, she's going to hang it on the wall for everyone to see, and she's going to tell them you did it, or she'll put it in a drawer and no one will ever see it again. So this is where I cheated. I did drill 2 holes in the center of that because I'm lazy, and at the time I thought I might leave the center of that top heart. This is where you really learn about direction of the grain, because you notice that has a twist coming over, the one coming over top of the other one. I'm trying to keep a heart shape up in the top there. And right in here, I've decided that I don't like the 2 cutouts in there, and I'm going to start to delineate and line this out. I'm putting my pencil lines back in, and I put them on the top because, I want to leave those to get these ropes or whatever the heck that vine is on the top. And this really will teach you about grain. Just this portion right here is probably the second hardest part to do on this without breaking it. And as you get more and more delicate with these, your cuts have to be smaller. Now, if you're doing this in a hardwood, each of these cuts, you can see that I'm still taking pretty good slices. The harder the wood, the sharper your tool has to be, and without getting into the semantics of it, there's, for gouges and that sort of thing, there are different angles of grinding that tend to work better for hardwoods versus softwoods. And some professional carvers, depending on the wood that they'll do, and they'll have 2 or 3 sets that they keep separate, and they keep them ground and sharpened for softwood, basswood, or hardwood. Even though basswood is considered a hardwood, it's not. And consequently, I've seen Rob carve balsa wood, and that's just insane. Balsa wood is so hard to carve, and your tools have to be really sharp, right, Rob? It is easy to carve, but it's also easy to screw that up. So you can see I put a twist in the top, poof, just like that. I'm going to round this stuff all over, make it all pretty. I do enjoy grabbing a knife and coming back. I did have to resist the temptation. I have the power carver sitting over on the side, and as I'm going through one thing, I'm thinking, my God, this is going to take 20 minutes to do this part, where I could just have grabbed the power carver and went to town. At the beginning, you saw that I had another pattern in there. I think I showed it to the right, and I'm going to finish that one. I started it, and I've got the filming of it, but I didn't get a chance to finish it, so it'll be a couple weeks, 10 days or so before I get back and finish that. You'll see the difference with a little different style of spoon, where I'm going to power carve the majority of it. And then I'll come back and do what they do down in Oberammergau in Germany, and show you how to cheat and put your knife cuts and your chisel cuts in that at the end. So it doesn't matter how you get there, it matters what you end up with. So here's a bonus. Here's the first of the 2 bonuses I told you you're going to see. If you're ever curious, these are Tohican glass eyes. This is my latest order, and if you want to know what $100 worth of glass eyes looks like, this is it. So I've got a bunch of red ones in there. Those ones there are for the black-winged ducks that I'm going to do in the next duck series. They're spherical. I think they're probably $6 a set. I don't remember what these are. These are 3 or 4. These are little red ones. I like to use those for dragons. And then here's the neat part. And they get them out pretty quick. That's Tohican glass eyes. They're taxidermy eyes. You see the big yellow one that's in there? That is the hawk that I'm going to be doing. And that's a monster. That's an expensive eye. I don't remember what it was. It's probably closer to $10 for that eye. And then here's standard, I don't know what the heck these are, 8 to 10 millimeter, maybe 12, standard browns. And then you've got 4 millimeter or 5 millimeter little brown eyes that I use for small birds. And these are the wire ones. If you want to know more about the eyes and what to pick, because if you go to Tahitian, there's 1,000 different ones on there, and you'll get confused, and the prices are different. I'll tell you which ones, if you're curious, that I use. So, as always, you need to sign your pieces, so someday somebody can get rich. I'm going to throw this spoon up on the Etsy channel, even though it doesn't do too much for anybody. If you're interested in it, or you want me to put your initials on it, I can do that. I can burn those in, I can carve those in, and then this will have a little light finish on it. So here's bonus number 2. So in the middle, I was bored, and I had a little piece of wood that was sitting on the side, kind of like Geordie's owl, and I made a little bird, and I put it on a wire so that it sticks in a plant. So there you go. There's a spoon, carved one. You got a day and a half, all night long. Carve it, give it to your significant other, and just like, subscribe, and comment. Hey, thanks a lot. This has been Ben with Studio on the Lake, and this is what we're waiting to happen. Thank you.